Welcome to the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. We really appreciate you listening. We'll be talking about everyday mom life with some pixie dust from Disney thrown in from time to time. This is a judgment-free zone. We know everyone parents differently, and we're just two moms doing our best as we figure out this whole parenting thing. So now, let's get this party started with today's episode.
Welcome to the Magical Mommy Mondays podcast. I'm Angela Dahlgren here with my co-host Jen Snyder.
Hello.
And we have Len Testa on the podcast today.
Hello, Angela. Sorry, go ahead. Cut me out. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. No. I interrupt almost every podcast I'm on during the intro, and people give me a look. I'm like, well, whatever. No, Len, we go way back, only about 5 or 6 years. You are the president of touringplans.com, author and co-author of many an unofficial guide to Walt Disney World, Disney Cruise Line? There's a lot of them.
Disneyland, British theme parks, yep.
Yeah, we can go on and on with that. And you're the computer scientist behind Glucose Path, which is a support software for physicians treating type 2 diabetes.
That's correct, right.
Okay, so you're a pretty busy guy.
Yeah, there's just a couple of things there.
It's all good. A good team. I have, in fact, an incredibly good team. I'm the pretty face of the organization.
Definitely.
Of
And we
course.
appreciate you making time for us today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Last episode, we talked about traveling with toddlers, babies, kids to Walt Disney World during COVID-19. So if you have not checked it out, please listen to that episode after this one. And we would love any feedback on our social media that you have to give us about this show. While this show is a passion project for us, we do want to create something that you will love as well. Okay, Len, today we are talking about 2 exciting projects that you have recently introduced for Touring Plans.
And what are they? No, just kidding.
Remind me which ones you
He's
know
like, I've
about.
been so busy. That would be
Brian's got a haircut. Let me tell you.
That's the recent one.
Yeah.
Fred built a picnic table for his squirrels outside. That was the other one I noticed,
Okay.
which is adorable. No, that would be the Touring Plans Lines app 2.0.
Right.
And the Lines app, that's the highest rated Walt Disney World app in iTunes and Google Play. So it's kind of a big deal to have that major update there.
Yeah.
And then you also have a new travel agency.
Right.
So that's on the docket today.
Which one do you want to talk about first?
Okay, let's talk about the app because I was looking at it earlier today and I was really excited to discuss it with you, and I have a lot of questions about it. Okay, so how long has the app been in the works?
So I started talking to Brad Huber. By the way, the app is our developer Brad Huber's baby. Conception, design, virtually all of the programming is his, and I think he did a fantastic, just outstanding job on it. So I started talking to him back in October. He had worked for us years ago, and then we all work remotely, right? Everybody's distributed, right? And there's no Touring Plans office that people go to. And he decided that he needed more human contact, which is coming from a program, I'm like, are you sure? What do you want? Anyway.
Are you sure this is your career path?
Yeah.
I thought this was our thing.
I'm not entirely, I don't understand. I mean, what you're saying is English. It doesn't make sense.
You're breaking the mold.
It's all the individual words, just not to put it. So I started talking to him late summer last year. And we stayed in touch. I mean, he left on great terms. So I talked to him and stuff, but he had learned a new technology called React Native, which is a way to write one piece of code for mobile devices that runs on both Apple and Google devices.
Perfect.
And so for us, small company where we don't want to have 2 developers each maintaining separate apps, that was really appealing to me. So we had started talking about like what the next version of Lines might be. And then 2 things happened last year. One, Disney announced Disney Genie. Mm-hmm. And then 2, one of our other developers left the company for personal reasons. So we had an opening and we had a need. So I asked Brad if he wanted to come back and work on that. And then he's like, yeah, so he did. So he's been working on it pretty much since October of last year.
Wow.
And I added a little bit of code that probably screwed him up more than anything. But I don't know that any of it was good, but he's done like 98% of the work on it. Yeah.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
So when it came to the changes to the app, did you crowdsource it all to get some idea of maybe what your audience would want?
So that's a great question. We knew that this is the first version. We think this is the platform on which we're going to build like the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew in the first version we were going to keep the things that people liked about the app. So basically, in the first version of the app, it's in Lines 2.0, it's let's replicate everything that's in the first version of Lines, but on the new platform. So things like showing basic information about the attractions and the restaurants in each park. What are the menus for each restaurant? How much do things cost? For the rides, what are the height requirements? When is the ride open? Does it support FastPass? And things like that. We also have a chat feature, an in-app chat feature that is super popular, and we wanted to keep that. And we wanted to keep things like the crowd calendar, and especially being able to create and optimize touring plans while you're in the park. That was the key thing. So for that, although we wanted to bring that feature over, we also wanted to completely re-engineer that to make it easier and faster for people to make plans. So in the old version, in version 1 of Lines, creating a touring plan, which is sort of like our core thing to do, that was not as easy as it could have been. But in version 2, it's much easier. So we actually hired a user experience firm last year to figure out how to do touring plans on mobile devices. And then we got our Lines community to test a bunch of different things. Like almost every couple of days, we were asking them, does this thing look better than that thing? Pick A or B. And that really, really helped. And I'm really happy with how it ended up. So again, version 1 is out there. Yeah.
I really love how it looks. I think it's
All
very
Brad, yeah.
visually appealing. It's very, just from like being a mom and a girl, I think it's really pretty to look at.
It is.
But with that, the old app didn't use much phone data or battery.
Right.
Can we expect the same with this update?
You can. So we were super cognizant on the back end that we would not use any more data than we absolutely had to. So we cut it down to where the data that's going back and forth between the app and our servers is super, super tiny. It's as close to the minimum as we can get. Let me give you an example. So one of the things that we do when we load the app is we load all of like the menu items one time. And because menu items don't change while you're in the park. Right. So we'll load those basically once a day. And then every once in a while, predetermined time, we'll go back and make sure, like if you're in the Magic Kingdom, let's go back and just make sure that none of the menus in the Magic Kingdom have changed coincidentally on the same day that you're in there. And we do that without having to load all the data back again. So that's an example of how we're trying to minimize stuff. The other thing we did with the new version of the app is we have pictures in the app now. So like there's, when you're looking at the Big Thunder Mountain page, there's a nice header vista of the rock work at Big Thunder Mountain. And then when you're looking at the restaurants, there's a little icon and a small circular image of the restaurants. And those are only loaded once. And they're super tiny too. So we tried to balance between visually interesting and then not only visually interesting, but relevant. Like the picture had to explain something about the ride. And so we were trying to balance that out with the bandwidth. But I think we hit a pretty happy medium there. The loading of the data and everything is really, really fast.
As you're talking about the pictures, I think it's something that seems simple enough or something you maybe wouldn't even think of, but I think it's so helpful for guests because sometimes they're in the parks, they are so overwhelmed. They may not know what rides are what, or there are multiple mountains in Magic Kingdom. So which one is which? And I think just having a visual aspect is helpful in most situations, but especially with an app in a place like Walt Disney World.
So for that, we were trying to think of. So we looked at at my Disney Experience app a lot, both for the things that did really well and the things that maybe could do better. Yeah. And so one of the things that we were interested in, one of the questions that we asked ourselves, especially when it came to the photos, was, does this photo communicate something that makes it worth the bandwidth that we're going to spend here in loading? And if it didn't, we either tried to get a better photo or we got the best photo that we can. I'm not saying that every photo that we have there is absolutely perfect, but that was the sort of the guidelines that we had for it. Like, what's the most relevant thing that we could show here if we're going to show a photo?
Yeah. Now that sounds really time consuming when you consider all of the attractions.
Yeah.
So so a shout out here to Guy Selga from our team, who anytime we had like a data question or a photo question, it was like, hey Guy, here's 800 things you need to check on the app, and go do that. Like, for example, one day we gave him this thing like, tell us the on the maps that we have of the parks, like tell me the exact X and Y coordinate for every possible thing we could list on the app. And then take those and translate that to a latitude and longitude, because we're going to use GPS in the next version of the app. So like, while we're doing all of this, Guy, tell me the lat and long.
While you're there, just add
exactly.
this.
Yeah. And then we asked him that like 6 or 7 times, like the same basic question, 6 or 7 different ways. It was great. Yeah.
And that's why that's why Touring Plans has really smart people working there.
Yeah, exactly.
It was incredible. Yeah, we actually had an intern this summer named Yoel, who did some really cool things for us. Have you guys seen the video that he did for what I did over my summer vacation video?
No.
Oh no.
Okay. So one of the reasons why we wanted to move to the new version of the app was that the platform will let us do things that will help people, that will be interesting 5 or 10 years from now. So if you think about touring plans, right? Disney just figured out that touring plans were interesting in 2019 when they announced Genie, right? But that was part of my thesis in the year 2000. So 20 years ago, we knew that like computer optimized touring plans were going to be a thing. And that idea has basically lasted us 20 years. So the question that I asked the team was, okay, 20 years from now, what technology will be basically taken for granted or will be assumed standard that we can implement now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the thing we came up with was augmented reality. Are you familiar with this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the idea that, imagine you're wearing a pair of like Apple glass glasses, where you can not only see ahead, but there's little cameras that are adding things to what you're seeing. Yeah. So imagine you walked up to like Jungle Cruise, and this was the example I gave the team. You walk up to Jungle Cruise, you look at the wait time sign. On your Apple glass screens, on your lenses, you should see not only the actual sign in real life that's in Walt Disney World, but what if we could add other information to that sign while you're looking at it, like not only the posted wait time, but how long we think you're actually going to wait.
Yeah.
Or maybe the ratings for different age groups. Like we know that you have 2 kids under age 10. Why don't we show you Jungle Cruise is rated 4.5 stars for adults and 3.5 stars for your particular children's age group. Mm-hmm. That's relevant information. You don't have to take your phone out to look at it. You don't have to navigate to an app, and then bring up Jungle Cruise. What if the glasses just figured out automatically what you were looking at and what was relevant for it? So we had we hired an intern. His name was Yoel. He'll be a sophomore this year in computer science at Harvard. And we asked him to do that. Like, oh my God. If I give you a picture of Jungle Cruise, could you demonstrate for me using this React Native technology how to put this stuff on there? So the interesting thing was we hired him like in the middle of June, in the pandemic. He's also in Long Island, by the way.
Okay.
And we asked him to do this. Like, okay, if I hold up my phone to Jungle Cruise, display this information. And it took him, I figured that was if he did that over the summer, that would be a great summer project.
Right. Here's a little project for you.
Yeah.
Exactly, right. If you could do this, and he didn't know React Native, he didn't know any of our stuff. He had that done in a week.
Oh my God.
Are you kidding?
And he had the prototype done. So what he would do is he would go out and he would find like a house, because he couldn't go to the Jungle Cruise, right? Because Jungle Cruise was closed at the time. So he'd go out and he would say, okay, I'm going to pretend that this, donut shop he's in Great Neck. In Great Neck is Jungle Cruise. And whenever the phone recognizes this donut shop, it's going to display Jungle Cruise information. So he did. And then I was like, okay, just to make sure this works, there's a wine bar across the street from my apartment in New York. Can you do the same thing? And he did, and it worked. So then we said, well, what's another interesting thing that you can work on? And the other thing that we thought was interesting was VR, augmented reality navigation through the parks, right? So instead of like looking down at a map and, or looking down at your phone where you're walking, what if you could just hold your phone up or in Apple Glass and just look through the camera at what you're watching, but on the camera have little indicators that say, turn left, go like this. Yeah. So if we put arrows on the screen, like if we superimposed arrows floating above the walkways in the park, could we guide you from point to point?
Like a little GPS.
Exactly. So you'd have to marry in GPS and this. So that's what he worked on for most of the rest of the summer, and it works. So there's actually an Instagram video of him walking from Space Mountain to Dumbo with these arrows pointing on either side of the walkway in which we're supposed to walk, and it says basically this way in big purple bold letters with little arrows going like this as you're walking. And as you get closer to the arrows, they go to the next point that you need to walk to. So they're constantly guiding you through there.
Oh man, now I have all kinds of questions. I know we're off on a tangent, but I think this is so cool. Now I have all kinds of questions. Okay, so with his initial prototype, before the I guess little GPS version, is it kind of you hold your phone up and it recognizes coordinates?
It recognizes where you are based on the image that it sees.
Interesting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and then how does it get that image? Is it put into software that he developed?
Yeah. So what you do is you'll keep the Lines app open, and then there'll be a camera feature in there. And so the way that it will work is the way that we're intending it to work is you could be anywhere in a park, and you would just hold up your phone to the nearest attraction or restaurant or point of interest. We would figure out where you are from there, and then marry that to GPS to figure out exactly where you were.
Right.
And then from that, give you directions.
So it doesn't require you, sorry to interrupt, it doesn't require you to like go around getting 360 pictures of an attraction. Just one. You just connect it to GPS or like a Google coordinate kind of thing. And then, okay.
Yeah. So and what we'll need then is we'll need photos of like every major point of interest. But again, we have people whose job is to be in the parks every day. They can go do that. That's not a big deal.
Okay, follow-up question. Because I have an Apple Watch, and you mentioned the Apple glasses.
Yeah.
Could you kind of connect some of these features to the Apple Watch?
Haptic feedback. We've talked about it. Yeah. So like it would buzz in your watch when you needed to turn left or right or something like that.
Yeah, right.
We've talked about it. It's going to come down to how much demand there is for that specific functionality.
Right. And that's kind of, not everyone has one. They have like a Fitbit or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the interesting thing about, so I actually flew him down to the Magic Kingdom, to Walt Disney World in early August to test this out in the parks. Because he had tested it out in his neighborhood. And, so if you think about the distance between like, let's say Space Mountain and Jungle Cruise, which is one of the example things that I told him to work on, like give me the path from there to there. So what we were doing was we were saying, okay, suppose I, Len, walk out, and I was in Florida at the time. I walk out of my condo in Celebration, assume that that's Space Mountain. Right? Give me the directions to walk to Jungle Cruise. And so in Celebration, I could actually literally just walk down the street and make a couple of lefts and rights, but basically stay on the street and get to Jungle Cruise. In Great Neck, where Yoel was, he actually had to walk through people's yards.
Yeah.
So, not the safest thing to do in a pandemic.
Not ideal, but it was an experiment.
Probably not great. So we flew him down and had him stay at a resort near a park. I think he was at Boardwalk. But basically, he would we'd go to the Magic Kingdom. We would test it out. And the interesting thing was the first time we were running it, it's hot in Florida in the summer, but the code that was trying to recognize everything and do the routing was like running so hard on the phone. It would actually, after about 30 seconds, start shutting down the screen. If the phone gets hot, the screen gets darker. Yeah. So it would take about 30 seconds for the phone to approach its thermal limits, and then we'd have to stop it. So he had to do a lot of thinking around that, but it worked out really well. So I'm interested to see how Brad brings that back into the actual code base itself. We'll see.
Right. And I guess that was my very last question for you, is what was next for Touring Plans? Do you see that as like a 5-year project, 3 years down the line?
So GPS will be like the very next big major release. So Lines 2.1 will be GPS. And we have some interesting features in that as well. And then I think the next version after that, or, within the next few months, will be the augmented reality stuff.
As far as what's currently in the app, and my favorites, I know the app really well for obvious reasons. I really love the Ride Now Wait feature.
Oh yeah. So that's still in there. The other interesting thing that we did was, so the Ride Now Wait feature is a good way for us to communicate whether the current wait time is good or not, right? So it's all about providing context around the information. Like if Disney says, okay, the posted wait time at Big Thunder Mountain is 45 minutes. Is 45 good or bad? Like if you've never been there before, like, is that great? Should I jump on this now? Or
you don't know if you're a first-time goer.
So that's what the Ride Now or Wait thing is supposed to provide, context around the number. And we did the same thing for restaurant ratings in the app now. So we, for the unofficial guide, we get around, in a normal year, between 200 and 250,000 restaurant ratings every year. So we have a fairly good idea of which restaurants are better than which other restaurants. And so we provide that number. We provide a rating that says something like, 93% of the people who we survey for this restaurant like it. And the average for all Walt Disney World restaurants is like 88% of the people who go like it, which means that if you're at a restaurant and the number is higher than 88 or whatever, it's better than average. And if it's below 88, it's worse than average. And so what we were trying to do is to provide context around those numbers for people. So for example, Be Our Guest is currently at 83%. And that's so far below average because we have so many surveys that it's actually not a good place to go eat. So if you were just walking into Walt Disney World and you saw Be Our Guest, 83% of the people who ate here recommend it. You'd be like, well, 4 to 5.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
If we were talking about dentists, 4 to 5 dentists would be set. But in reality, in the Magic Kingdom, you could do there are many better places to eat. So we actually provide now a text label for that number that says much below average. And I can only imagine when we were putting this in, I was thinking the people at Disney Food and Bev are going to hate this, because context is not something that they're good at providing.
It's so important, though. Touring Plans has been about saving people money, but getting the most out of their vacation.
Yep.
And for a first-time goer, like you said, who doesn't know what attractions look like, if the restaurant that they want to go to is good, this is all really important things. And when to ride the attraction with the Ride Now Wait feature.
Yep.
What would you say your favorite new feature is that you kind of updated? Would it be the photos that you worked really hard on, or?
No, so I think the way that Brad implemented the creating a touring plan on the mobile app now is really, really good. Would be my number one. It's much easier now to create and edit a touring plan on the app. The other thing I think is that Brad did is everything's asynchronous now. So in the old days, whenever you submitted a wait time, whenever you said hey, Lines, I just waited 45 minutes for Big Thunder Mountain, you would push a button and then you would have to wait for that piece of information to go to our server. We'd have to record it, and then we'd have to send back a response that says, okay, I got your piece of information. All that happens behind the scenes now. So it's much faster. So you just say, I waited 45 minutes, click, and then you go on to the next thing, and you don't have to wait to get a response. So the asynchronous responses are really, really good.
And it seems more interactive beyond just using it in the parks. I saw there's, the badges feature, which might have been there before, and I just didn't notice.
There, yeah, it just wasn't obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're actually designing graphics for the badges. So you get badges for submitting wait times. So if you submit, for example, 5 wait times for Peter Pan, you get an Off to Neverland badge. And we've got a bunch of goofy badges.
That's so cute.
We actually did one this summer, and it was if you submitted a wait time in August in Walt Disney World, you got a for the first time in forever badge, and it was a limited edition badge, so you had to actually be in the parks to get it done. Yeah, but we have goofy badges for virtually everything. Doing all the attractions in Fantasyland gets you a badge. Doing 3 attractions before 10 a.m. get you a rope drop badge, stuff like that. It's a lot of fun, and people like them.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to my final question. Jen, I will let you talk at some point. I'm all about this. What has the response been like since the update?
Really, really good. The thing we always worry about, especially with an app like Lines that's been around for 10 years in its old form, and that was so highly rated, like 4.7 out of 5 stars on iTunes, is that people are just resistant to change. But the good thing is virtually everyone likes the new version almost as well as the old version. You get a couple of holdouts, but again, we have over 100,000 users. I would expect, if 98% of them are happy, I'm good. The response that we got on it was very, very positive. And I think that's due to a couple of things. One, I think Brad did a great job on design, but two, at every step of the way for every major decision, instead of us trying to figure out what our users wanted, we just asked them.
Yeah.
So we'd go out into our forums or into our chat and say, hey, we're thinking about doing this or that. Which one do you like better? And sometimes the answer was, I like a blend of those two things. And so we'd revise it that way. So big thanks to our community for that. I think their input on the design was very meaningful. It was very specific, and it was actionable. So again, great teamwork all around.
Yeah, the liners are great.
They are.
I'm going to share a personal story for a second before I get to my question. But back in January, that was my first time being in the parks having the Touring Plans app.
Really?
And I know, it's very exciting. And then, unfortunately, I haven't been able to go back since.
I understand.
But at some point, the People Mover, my favorite ride, shut down. And this was my final day in Disney. So I was getting on a plane at like 6 o'clock. I'm like, all right, well, People Mover, I don't know. It's always like pausing and doing things. That's fine. Let's go to lunch. We'll come back and it'll be up and running. And it wasn't. And I was like, well, now I'm getting nervous. Let's go on Carousel of Progress and come back. It's still not. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to go on the People Mover before I go home. What's happening? Went to the Touring Plans app.
Oh, we'll tell you when it's going to come back up.
Exactly. But it was like anytime we were talking to cast members, they're like, yeah, it's kind of weird. They were evacuating people off of it. I'm like, I've never seen this with the People Mover. Like, what's happening? Yeah. Touring Plans gave like to the minute where I was like, well, this is going to be a really good test for this app because I'm watching it. I've been watching this ride all day. Let's see exactly what it said. Oh. That's what it opened. I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever.
So it's really interesting. The way we do that is we keep track of every downtime every ride has, and we've done it since like 2012 or 2014.
Yeah.
So if a ride goes down, and then our statistician Steve Plume created a model that says for any attraction, if it breaks down at this particular time of the day, this is how long the average breakdown is when it happens. So like if Test Track breaks down at 9:30 in the morning, right? It's typically down for 45 minutes. That's fine. It'll come back, right? So we'll say if it's 9:30, it'll come back at 10:15, and that's the number you would see, Jen. But if it breaks down at like 7 p.m., it's probably done for the day. They're just not going to bring it back up.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve's model does that, and so
it works perfectly. Yeah.
And relieves anxiety.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. I was able to ride it with my new People Mover hat, but I digress. But I think it's so interesting talking about this because most people, see all these apps out there. They don't even realize how much is going on behind the scenes with. It's crazy. But since there was a little bit of a wrench thrown into the mix in March with COVID and a park shut down, which none of us really saw coming for that length of time. How did that affect you guys? Did it help in some ways because you were able to focus on some other things maybe, or was it a struggle while the parks were shut down?
I mean, there's obviously bad things about it. And setting aside, the human cost of the pandemic, it allowed us to focus on, especially the stats team, to focus on things that they don't normally have time to look at. So we completely redid how we do modeling using trends. So for example, in the old way of modeling or predicting crowds, it was difficult for us to say February might be busier than normal because January was busier than normal. Like the idea that like that there was these trends, going up. That was something we weren't able to do. But the team developed that, I think, in March, April, and May, so that we should be able to detect trends, especially increasing trends, or decreasing trends, monotonic trends, going all one way or all the other. We should be able to detect those easier. And that was good because, like I said, they typically didn't have the time to do those sorts of things. The big challenge, of course, is nobody traveled for 100 and some days in the Magic Kingdom. And even then, I mean, most people aren't traveling now. So from a financial perspective, that's a huge hit for us. So our revenue was at one point down 75% year over year, which is, when you're running a business. The interesting thing is, so when I started the company back in 2001, it's right after 9/11. And I said that I would always run the company so that we had at least 6 months of cash on hand so that we could survive a 9/11 type event again. And as we grew and we expanded, we always kept sort of that same margin, maybe not 6 months all the time, but definitely many months of cash. And that definitely helped us get through this. So even though at one point our revenue was down 75% year over year, we haven't run out of money, and we're not going to run out of money like anytime soon. Yeah. So that's good. The other interesting thing is there's a core group of our users who kept buying subscriptions even though the parks were closed. Like, revenue never dropped to zero for us.
Right.
It never got below 20% year over year, which was really interesting. And that's a testament to the community who, not only believes in the Disney parks, but believes in us.
Yeah.
And I can't thank them enough. Yeah, I mean, that's how we got through this. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Being a business owner, do you have advice for other business owners, maybe those who are starting, who are going through a crisis like this? Because you kind of started the business after 9/11. Now you've gone through something like this again. Do you have advice for other business owners?
The 2008 financial, I mean, it happens once every 10 years, right? There's a shock to the system every 10 years. I would say as soon as you're able to start saving up money for these cushion type things, that would be my advice. We've never had debt. Well, we do now. Before this, we have a Paycheck Protection Program loan and an EIDL loan. The PPP will pay back because we use it all on salaries. And that definitely helped too. The government intervention helped. I should also say the feds will probably need to do more for the travel industry. But definitely having our spare cash helped. I would say having that is good. Having little debt. We had no debt before this, and I think that really helped. Like, going into the PPP with some cash on hand and with a very good credit score personally. When we got our PPP approval loan in like 4 hours.
Oh my gosh.
That was easy. Yeah. So that helped. Yeah, I would say just as soon as the thing is over, start preparing for the next one. That would be my advice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good advice. Okay, moving on to something a little more positive. Let's talk about the Touring Plans travel agency.
Yeah. Okay. This was sort of out of left field. So we've always been interested in helping people solve travel problems, right? So if you think about touring plans, right, that's basically what it is. How do you save time in line at theme parks? But we're always looking for other things to do. One of the things we have on the site, Angela, you're familiar with this. Jen, I don't know if you've seen it. It was the least expensive ticket calculator, still runs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing that told people which combination of Disney World tickets to buy to minimize your cost so that you did everything you wanted, but you didn't have to pay for anything else extra. And that came to us from a question that Bob Salinger gave me one time. And his question to me was, no matter what you want to do in Walt Disney World, right? If you want to go to a theme park for 1 day or 10 days or 5 days or 7 or whatever, and you wanted to go to a water park, or you didn't want to go to a water park, or you wanted to go to mini golf, or you didn't want to go to mini golf. His question to me was, can you give me 3 bullet points for the book that tells you what ticket to buy? Like, could you come up with 3 rules? So I spent a weekend trying to figure out what those 3 rules might be. And at the end of the weekend, I was like, not only can't you say it in 3 rules, you probably couldn't say it in 30 rules. So I ended up writing a computer program to do it. And the interesting thing about the computer program is, have you ever seen the game show Supermarket Sweeps?
Yes.
Okay. The least expensive ticket calculator is Supermarket Sweeps for Disney World tickets. Okay. It's literally exactly the same problem. In fact, I did a lecture for the math department at Furman University in 2018 that showed how these two things were the exact same problem. And it's called the knapsack problem if you're into operations research. But basically, if you can solve one, you can solve the other. So so now we wrote this computer program, we put it online, and it's free. And it asks you a couple of things like how many adults are going, how many kids, how many days you're staying, and so on. And then it goes out and it looks at every possible combination of tickets and figures out not only which tickets you should buy, but the vendor you should buy them from. Because Disney uses approved third-party wholesalers for ticket discounts, and sometimes those tickets are $50-$60 cheaper than what you can get from Disney, and literally they're the exact same ticket. So we solved that problem, and so we had tickets, we had touring plans, then we did the hotel room views. You guys have seen this?
I love the room view feature. That was, okay, out of all the tools I had to make a video on, that was my favorite one.
It's so
and
pretty.
I use it so much more than you'd think too. Like I have to go off on a tangent. My parents had this one room at the boardwalk that they stayed at 4 years ago, and it was a corner view, so they had 2 windows, and they're like, I want to stay at that room. I wish I knew what room that was. And I found it using that feature, and they were so excited. So that I love that one. And I think that's one that's very underrated, and people don't talk about that feature enough.
But once you use it, it's the most amazing thing. Jen, have you seen it?
I haven't, but now I need to because there are so many rooms from my childhood I need to revisit.
And then the room request feature with it.
Right.
Oh my god.
So Dan, I'll tell you. Do you know what it is? The hotel room tool?
I'm catching on now, but I
We're
didn't know
tell
about it
you.
before this.
So back in 2011, so when I first started writing for the guide, 2003, the deal that Bob Selinger and I made, was that we would answer all of the emails ourselves. The idea being that, quality control, that we answer. And this was when people had to write physical letters and put stamps on them. We didn't get that much mail, right? But when, everyone got on the internet, the amount of email we got every day grew. So in 2011, I answered 16,000 emails from the guide by myself, averaged about 43 a day. 43 emails a day. And that's basically all I did. Like I couldn't do any programming. I had a full-time job.
Yeah.
And that was it. That's all I was doing. And I was like, oh my God, there's got to be, I can't do this. So I did 2 things. One, we hired Geraldine, our customer service person, who was literally not only the first employee of touringplans.com, but the most valuable employee of touringplans. Like I'm probably like 5th or 6th on the list. I'm way down
so nice
on the list of important people in touring. Like I'm not even near the top.
Sweet.
Like every full-time person is probably worth more than me in that company. I basically, again, the pretty face. That's fine. But we tried to figure out, like, of these 16,000 emails, like what were people asking, and could we automate the answer? And it turns out that a large number of questions were some variation on this. Hey, I'm staying at Boardwalk. What room should I request? Well, you can't answer that in one email because your idea of like a best room depends. Do you want it to be quiet? Do you want it to be close to transportation? Do you want it to have a pretty view? Like whatever. So Bob and I are sitting around at Pop Century, at the bar at Pop Century outside the pool bar, and we're trying to figure out like how do we answer these questions. And his idea was to come up with a database of things like how quiet the room is, how far it is from transportation. I'm like, beautiful, like database with, there's like, there are like 36,000 hotel rooms in Walt Disney World, but a database of 36,000 rooms, not a problem at all. And he's like, okay, well, how do we answer the question about view? So we're sitting there, we're drinking, and he's like, let's call our photographer Richard over. So we call this guy Richard, who was our photographer.
Makes you sound really bougie. Let's just call the photographer guy.
Yeah.
Let's have him come on over here.
Like, he's down the street. He's real close. So we call Richard. We're like, hey, Richard, there's 192 rooms in this particular building of Pop Century. How long would it take you to photograph the view you get from each room. So imagine you're standing at the front door of each room with your back to the door and you're facing out the way that you would if you're looking out the window. Take a picture, right? Yeah. And there's 190 rooms. How long would it take you? So he goes off and he starts. He comes back in an hour.
Wow.
With 100. Yeah, I'm like, okay. So we do the math and we're like, okay, he could probably get a photo of the view from every room in every hotel in Walt Disney World in like a month. Mm-hmm. So we're like, okay, go do that. So the value resorts are easy, right? You just walk around the value resorts, right? The moderate resorts are all easy, right? The deluxes are where there's a problem.
How do you get in?
Yeah. So we ended up doing a couple of things. We did all the values. We did all the moderates. For the deluxes, you're able to walk around the first floor of all the buildings. That's easy, right? So you can do that. So we do that. And then we selectively book hotel rooms, like in different, like if we're in Animal Kingdom Lodge, we book one room facing each direction so we could get a representative view. We were not going to be able to get all of them, right? But if we get like one room in each sort of wing of the hotel, that's a good start. And then we told Disney what we were doing. And then some of the hotel managers, I won't mention which ones, totally understood what we were trying to do. And they would let us into some of the empty hotel rooms. Mm-hmm. So with that, when we launched, of the 36,000 hotel rooms in Walt Disney World, we had 30,000 photos.
Wow.
And then what we did is we asked our users, because they'll tell us like, hey, I'm staying at Animal Kingdom Lodge. Mm-hmm. We would say, hey, could you send us a photo of the view you have from your room along with the room number? And over like the next 3 or 4 years, we got virtually every other room in Walt Disney World. So now we've got, I think of the 36,000, we've got like 34,000. The interesting thing is our community started sharing like which rooms were the best.
Yeah.
Derek Bergen, who blogs for us, emailed me last year, and his question was this: okay, there's 36,000 hotel rooms in Walt Disney World. Which one gets the most requests from users?
Ooh.
So let me pause here and say, so we did this thing with the photos, right, where we show you the view you get from every room.
Yep.
And I think we launched this in 2014. And in 2014, you could actually fax Disney, like fax machine fax Disney, a room request for a particular room.
Yep.
If you had okay. So we found a service online that would let us send a fax, basically the same way we send an email. Okay. And so we started offering this to our users. We said, okay, go through our photos of, the Polynesian, find the room that you like. You booked a standard view room. We'll show you all the standard view rooms. Find the one you like. Give us the room number. Tell us your reservation number. And then 5 days before check-in, we'll fax the Polynesian your request for this room. And people went nuts for this, right? This was like, it got to the point where we were sending, and I'm not exaggerating here, between 3,000 and 4,000 faxes a month.
Oh my God.
To Walt Disney World. And the people in centralized inventory management at Disney are all wonderful people who do literally their very best to make those requests happen. I cannot thank them enough for that. They're all good people. So we were doing 3,000 or 4,000 faxes a month. Eventually, Disney gave us our own private email address that we can send them to. But anyway, going back, so Derek Bergen said, Len, you're sending these 3,000 or 4,000 requests every month. What's the most popular room requested in Walt Disney World? And I'm like, well, Derek, there's 36,000 hotel rooms. None of them are going to be more popular than the others, right? And he's like, no, go check the database. I'll bet you'll find.
Bossy Bergen.
Yeah. So I did, and I'm like, there's no way, right? I mean, you might have one room that gets requested like, 10 times or whatever.
Right.
But nothing's going to jump out. And I was completely wrong, and Derek was completely right. So it turns out that the most requested set of rooms is this block at the Polynesian. It's the 3912 to 3916. And it's in Tokelau. And it's a DVC building. And the thing that makes it popular is this. You know how Disney categorizes their hotel room views, Jen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So imagine you're looking straight ahead with blinders on.
Right.
Whatever your view is, that's what Disney charges you for.
Right.
So if you're looking straight out at Tokelau and you can see another building, that's a garden view. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, the interesting thing about these rooms in Tokelau, 3912 to 3916, is that if you turn your head like 20 degrees, you see the Magic Kingdom. right? You straight on Castle, Space Mountain, fireworks, everything.
Yeah.
And it's also near a door with a landing where if you wanted the full on picture window view of it, you would see the entire thing. So super popular. And those 4 rooms by themselves have been requested over 1,000 times.
Oh my God.
By our users, yeah. So funny story. I went to but like 1,100, just those 4 rooms. So I went to I actually stayed at the Poly when it reopened, the week after it reopened in June 29th, and I did not make a room request, but the hotel room assigners put me in 3914.
Oh my God.
What is it? Was it as good of a view as you thought?
Oh, it was fabulous. I was like, and I think at the time there were like 20 people at the Poly. Again, I didn't put in a request. They don't, I'm sure, I don't know if they looked at the name or not, but I think someone probably looked at it and said, "Oh, this is Len. This is the most popular room. Let's
We're gonna give him that
room." Yeah.
It's too much of a coincidence not to happen, right? So
I thought you were gonna say maybe it was requested like 100 times or something, not 1,100.
1,100 times. Yeah, it's crazy. Those rooms, and then so the room view tool helps you find a relatively inexpensive room with a great view.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you use it. So we
and
had
Len, you can also put in like filters and preferences that you want in a room too.
Yeah, you can say like, I want a low floor room, I want a high floor room, I want a room within, or I want a room within 5 minutes of the lobby or 5 minutes of transportation, and it'll show you on a map all of the rooms that match. Yeah. So we built multi-floor maps of every building, every resort for Walt Disney World. It took a year.
Yeah, but you have that, and then in the most Len Testa move ever, you built a software for the ticket system, the ticket issue you had.
Yeah, so we had touring plans. We figured out, what you were going to do during the day. We knew how to rate restaurants and rides. We knew where the cheapest tickets were. We knew where the best hotel rooms were. And then sort of all this stuff sort of came together. We've been thinking for a while that the experience that you get in booking, the booking process wasn't as good as it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you talk to travel agents, they spend a lot of time going back and forth, especially with people who haven't been to Walt Disney World before, right? Like, so you might, if this is your first time, you might say, okay, I'm going to Walt Disney World. I want to stay for a week and I want to stay at the Grand Floridian, right? So you send that request into your travel agent, and it takes a travel agent anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to look at Disney's website, to come up with a price for what you want to do, and then to type it up in an email and send it back to you. Right. So 20 minutes to an hour. Mm-hmm. Invariably, people ask for the Grand Floridian, they look at the price. Oh, it's going to be $10,000. Then the next question is, well, what do you have at Pop Century? Mm-hmm. Right. Which means that the 20 minutes to an hour that the travel agent just spent is completely wasted.
Yep.
Right.
No money.
It didn't help anyone with anything. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So we started looking at that, saying, how do we cut back on the back and forth? Number one, it's frustrating for us, like for the customers, to have to wait to get the information that we want.
Mm-hmm. True.
Right. And two, every piece of information that we don't want that somebody has to give us is wasted time on their side. So we were looking at ways to fix that. Like, how do we cut down on the back and forth, and how do we get you the thing that you want, the information that you want faster? So the first idea that we had was this thing called a hotel chooser, which should be live next week on the site. And basically it says, if you've never been to Walt Disney World before, imagine you're shopping for a refrigerator on Amazon, right? So you know how Amazon works. There's like a filter thing on the left that says, here's the price range, here's the rating, here are the characteristics of it, right? Do you want it in white or stainless steel or whatever, or by brand? Imagine you had a filter like that for Disney World hotels, where the filters were things like price, transportation options, ratings, availability of sit-down restaurants, and so on. Imagine you had that, where you could just filter down a list to where you had like 1, 2, or 3 hotel options that you were seriously considering, right?
Mm-hmm. Less overwhelming for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, you could look at it and say, even if you didn't know anything about the hotels, if we could tell you something about the hotels, like this is good for kids because it's got great pools, or this one's better for adults because it has fine dining, right? You could sort of narrow down your choice. If we figured that if we could give you that, then you would be, along with the price, you'd be more likely that your first communication with your travel agent results in something that's useful to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we built that. And as we were building that, I talked to a bunch of travel agencies about like the process of booking a trip and all of the things that all the questions that people ask. The other thing that was super interesting to us was, let's say you're going on a weekend trip, Thursday to Sunday, right? So you're flying in Thursday, you're flying out Sunday. You're going to spend Friday and Saturday definitely in the parks. But it's an open question as to whether you're going to spend Thursday and Sunday in the parks, right?
Mm-hmm.
It depends on your flights. And for a lot of people, it depends on how much the additional days in the park cost.
Right.
Right. So if you say, I only want 2 or 3 day tickets, right? Then your travel agent quotes you for, 2 or 3 day tickets. And then you realize that the fourth ticket might not be that much more. You would have to ask the travel agent again, how can you price this entire thing out again, but with 4 day tickets?
Right.
Right. And what if you want park hoppers? Not that they're doing park hoppers now, right? But imagine that same scenario for park hopper, for water parks, for meal plans, and so on, right?
And
it's
a lot of waiting back and forth.
Back and forth, right? So the question that we had was, couldn't you just get all that information at once, like in a grid?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that's what we're working on now, so that there is no back and forth. We basically present you with a single screen with all the different price options. Like, you want to, let's say you're staying at Pop's not great, Caribbean Beach, right? Here's a standard view room. Here's a garden view room. Here's a water view room. You want it with 2 day tickets, it's this much. 3 day tickets, this much. 4 day tickets, this much. You want to add park hopper, it's this much, and so on. And just basically give you a little
Lay
click.
it all out.
Yeah. So let's say you had a budget in mind of like $2,000, right? You could say, I could, instead of getting a water view room, I could get a standard view room and then a park hopper. That's useful. But you don't have to go back and forth with the travel agent to figure that out. It'll all be on the screen where you can just click until you get the price and the options that you want. And then when you're ready to book, you send it to us and we'll book it.
And what's important is with the Disney approved travel agents is they get their commission from Disney.
Right. So it's free. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you don't just do Disney.
No. So this is the interesting thing. So so one of the agents that I was talking to at the time was Annette Jackson. I was working for another agency whom I've known for years. We did a podcast together for many years, but I was asking her a bunch of questions about how it all worked. Not only on the front end, like, how do you book these things, and what questions do people have, but like on the back end, like how does Disney handle the stuff on the back end?
Yeah.
And then as we were developing these tools, we realized that it made sense for us to have somebody in-house who actually knew all of this stuff. So we hired Annette in June.
Okay.
And she's fabulous. She knows the industry really, really well. People at Disney know her very, very well. She's handled my personal travel for years. And she's handled large events for our podcast, with hundreds and hundreds of people. She's done not only, Disney cruises, but she's done a ton of Royal Caribbean cruises as well. So that gave us exposure to other things. Like I do DCL fairly well. Jen, have you been on a DCL cruise?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Which ships?
I only went on one. I was on what was I on? Magic.
Magic.
Yes.
Where'd you go?
Bahamas. It was a quick three night weekend back in 2013. It's been too long.
You've got to, when they start sailing again, you got to go on a ship.
I know. I really do. Especially that was before kids. So kids haven't been on one. No, we went on one.
Go without the kids, Jen. It's way too stressful with them.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So Disney is only a little bit for kids.
It's true. That is very true.
If they ever go out of New York again, I did Canada.
Okay.
And it was amazing. One of my favorite cruises of all time. But I mean, just take the train over and then up to 50th and bop over.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Maybe touring plans will book the trip for you.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's good.
So Annette brought all of that experience with her. And like I said, I've been on Royal a few times. I really like Royal Caribbean ships. I think they're good value. But Annette's been on, way more cruises and done way more travel, even than I have. So having that kind of experience is great. And then we hired Stephanie Hudson, another agent who has thousands and thousands of clients who've been everywhere in the world. And Stephanie knows all kinds of travel, river cruises, or, if you want to go to Venezuela. I mean, Stephanie sent some people there before, so she's really, really talented.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to have her as well.
Yeah, you've
That's
got
awesome.
amazing staff. I think I remember Annette. Was she the one keeping the boys in line on the podcast?
Yes, that's
remember.
how we know her. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, you said her name. I'm like, I've heard that name before.
The other interesting thing is that we had noticed, like when we developed certain tools on the site, so we have more than 500,000 people who have signed up for touring plans, and literally thousands of travel agents use it. But they use it to get information to their clients. So if you're a travel agent, you'll buy one subscription, but then send the information out to 400 of your clients, which has always rubbed me the wrong way. So we realized that if travel agents were using that information, they thought it was valuable, and that we were close enough to providing almost all of the service that they did, but on our own platform. So we thought that was a big piece of information that we had, that we knew that travel agents thought it was useful, like what we did was useful.
Well, and Brian and I always joked that trying to explain our job to people, everyone just assumed that we were a travel agency anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So it makes sense for you to add that. And I read your blog post on kind of introducing it, and you really made the point that you're not out to compete with any other travel agencies. You still have great relationships with the ones that you are working with.
We introduced our own travel agency by telling our readers how great these other travel agencies were.
Yeah, you listed like 5 by name.
I mean, they're all great. I'll mention them now. So Suppositoro at Small World Vacations is fabulous. I talk to her all the time about the business of running a travel agency, and I've known her for 20 years, and she's amazing. She writes for the Unofficial Guide, and I love her to death. Then I said Tammy Whiting at Storybook Destinations.
Love Tammy.
She's fabulous. She knows more about DCL than I do, and I wrote a book on it. She also lives in Celebration, by the way, so I saw her over the summer.
She does.
Yeah, I helped her move. It was great. But she's
awesome.
She's fantastic. I mean, she's good people. And again, there's no reason why we need to compete. I will tell you, like, I am not as knowledgeable about DCL as Tammy is, and Tammy's fantastic. If you want to book a DCL trip, you could do worse than Storybook, right? And then Michelle over at Magical Vacations Travel has a really interesting business model that nobody else has, where she will prepay Disney for certain hotel rooms and get a steep discount, steeper than you could get like as an annual pass holder. Like it's better than any deal Disney ever runs. And she's the only travel agency I know that has that model, and she runs it really, really well. And that's, if that's what you're looking for, like if your dates work for the dates that she's able to book stuff from Disney, I think that's a fantastic thing to do. And I'm really impressed with the business model she came up with. So the thing that I keep telling everybody over and over again is, if we act in the client's best interest, even if that's, hey, you should go to this other agency, or hey, you shouldn't buy your tickets from Disney, even though we get a commission. As long as we act in the customer's best interest, we'll be fine. Mm-hmm. That's the thing we just have to keep telling people over and over again, because there's a lot of agents here that's a different mentality than they've been taught, right? Mm-hmm. So like we got a number of emails from agents after we made our announcement that said basically, I'm never going to tell anybody about touring plans again because now you're a competitor. I'm like, well, that's fine. Basically what you're saying is you want your clients to wait in line longer, and you're not comfortable that the value you're providing is any different than what we would provide. That's not a great long-term strategy, in my opinion. So, okay. The world is big enough for all of us. We have a little niche that we think we can fill, and we'll see what happens. But I'm super excited. Yeah, I think the tools that we can provide, we're definitely doing we plan to do all kinds of extensive testing on the information that we give back to clients. Like, does this quote of the thing that you asked for, is this thing useful? Mm-hmm. We plan on testing that, repeatedly. And there's a lot of other stuff that we can do that we have over the next 6 months. We'll see.
And with that in mind, if you're a Touring Plan subscriber, you will receive a 1-year subscription or extension by booking any Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or Universal vacation. But you also do any other kind of vacation as well.
Yeah, like I said, if you have something in mind, like, you want to rent one of the Fiji Islands and bring Beyonce over there, we can probably figure out how to do that. Do that
Oh
as
God,
well.
I've been meaning to talk to somebody about that.
Just bring Jen and I with.
Finally,
Thank God.
can get that sorted out. That has been weighing on me.
Finally, Jen, you found a travel agent. That will
Oh
do
my
that for you.
goodness. Whew, okay.
I know it is. Yeah.
I
so-
cannot let you go, Len, without shouting out your social media. As someone who ran your social media, I
right.
have absolutely loved what Chrissy and Julia have done with it.
Oh yeah.
Pictures that Julia posts, it gives me that Disney nostalgia, and the IGTVs and the live videos
That's
have
Chrissy,
made my
yeah.
day that Chrissy does. I hear her voice in the background and it just warms my heart and makes me all giddy. She just has this, it's just made with butter and sunshine and just like all the nice things, and makes me so happy. But she mentioned something on one of the last lives I watched. You do something for your Bandcamp subscribers. It's like hours of Disney ambiance or something.
Yeah, so we have the this podcast that I do with Jim Hill called the Disney Dish podcast.
Maybe you've
with
heard
Jim
of it.
Hill. Maybe you've heard of it. Yeah.
Is that new? No, I'm kidding.
It's been around a
Just
minute.
kidding.
And so it's Bandcamp, which sort of works like Patreon, right? You can subscribe and support the show. And our goal is a couple times a month to do shows that are exclusive just to people who subscribe to the site. And it's like $4 a month. We're not talking about a huge amount of money here. And sometimes the shows are deep research shows. Like one time I went to the Buzz Price archives in Central Florida and did a deep dive into all the stuff Disney was going to build for Epcot, the city. And that became a series of podcasts. Or we did a series of shows on attractions that were never built in Walt Disney World. And that was like, 2 months worth of shows. So we do research shows. But lately what people really like is when we're in the parks.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing a series of shows where Chris and I will walk around the parks and talk about what happened that day when we're both in the park at the same time. Or just walk around and give people ambiance. Like, let's say, start at the Epcot entrance and walk all the way through and ride Test Track. Like, what does that sound like as you're walking through Future World and Test Track?
I love
So Chrissy's been doing those, and she's been doing a fantastic job with them too. It really makes you feel like you're there because you can hear the background music and it changes. But you notice it when it changes, it doesn't automatically change from one land to another. It sort of bleeds together.
Yeah.
So you can hear one getting softer and one getting louder. Also, you hear people say things like, Jimmy, stop picking your nose.
No, it's this way.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then you laugh. That's where we go.
Yeah. There was one. It was we were walking by and there was this woman who said in like the best New York accent I've ever heard, it's like, can't you see him having a crisis over here? I was like, oh God.
This is why I come to the parks.
No, this is it. So we did that. So Chrissy and I did a bunch of them, and then I'll probably be back in the parks in a few weeks. But she's picking up and doing things. So she's done like your Splash Mountain, basically starting at Pirates and walking all the way to Splash Mountain and getting on. But she's doing a few in the parks, maybe 1 or 2 a week. They're fantastic. Yeah.
That's so cool.
I love it. Definitely head to the Touring Plans Instagram. That's where you'll see all of that great stuff. But they also have Twitter and Facebook and touringplans.com, of course. Check out their blog as well. But Len, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you making the time.
Oh, thanks, Angela. And thank you, Jen.
Oh, no, thank you. I just would like to put a really quick request in that, to quote Hamilton, I would like to be in the room where it happens, where I'm not going to know everything that you might be saying when you get too detailed, but one of these Pop Century bar conversations where you're like, what if we just took pictures outside hotel rooms? How could we make this happen? I just want to listen to that whole conversation.
Be a fly on the wall.
And then just watch it come to life. Like, oh my God, that's interesting.
It really is like, what's the perfect solution for something, or what's the biggest thing that we could do, and then try to figure out how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting, especially for like a Disney nerd, I love all that.
Oh, I know. We eat that up.
Yeah.
I mean, if people have ideas, I mean, I'm happy to entertain them. Some of the things that we've done have been user comments, like, Yeah. So yeah, if anyone has ideas of how we can make their trip planning process better, let me know.
Yes. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to give us a review on iTunes if you'd like. You can find us on Twitter at Magic Mom Monday, Instagram at Magical Mommy Mondays, and you can email us at magicalmommymondays@gmail.com. And Jen and I will put our own social media handles in the show notes. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magical Mommy Monday podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. You can find us on Twitter at Magic Mom Monday and on Instagram at Magical Mommy Mondays. The music you heard on this podcast was written and produced by Matt Harvey. We'll see you next time.